Get your man the flute to play song, the fuck.
Here go it, everyone. Good evening, Toshi, and welcome back to episode number 102 of the Inline G Flute podcast with me, your host, motherfucking Inline G. 102 episodes. Fucking hell, man. When did that happen? 102 weeks. That's insane. That's nearly 2 years, I think. So we're back, lads. Listen, I haven't seen you in a while. I know I did the 100th episode special, but that was recorded a little bit in advance. And also, as you might remember, I was a little bit drunk. Okay, can't really remember it. And then we've had a lot of guest episodes since then. We've had Alia, we had Michael Faust, we had Dr. Sylvain Laborde with sports psychology. It's been a mad few weeks, and I haven't got to speak to you guys one-to-one, so we're back for another solo episode. What did you guys all think of Sylvain, by the way, last week's sports psychologist? I thought he was fucking great, and that episode hasn't done the numbers I wanted to, and I feel it's maybe because he's a sports psychologist. A lot of people have went, nah, not interested already, but fuck, I loved listening to him. But let me know what you guys thought, because one of my favorite episodes. But doing all these episodes with guests has given me a few weeks off podcasting, and let me tell you guys, it's been a bad few weeks to be a pint of Guinness because I've been lashing them into me, boy. But I'm back now. I'm refreshed and I'm eager to entertain and educate. Do you know, some people tell me that they recommend this podcast to their students for educational purposes, which brings me both great happiness and makes me laugh my wee Irish bollocks off because some rude man on the internet is now a respected source of information. If you or if anyone you know ever cites this podcast in an academic paper, please, for the love of God, send me a message and tell me, because I cannot wait for the day that happens. If it's already happened, please let me know. So anyway, here we are. We're on a new episode and a new topic. And dear listeners, this has been another really fun one for me. And it's back to core Inline G. Like, I love the guest episodes, but the research that goes into the solo episodes, the 3 a.m. rabbit holes and the endless cans of Red Bull Zero are what this podcast is all about. And I adore that work. Gives me a reason to be alive. This podcast is my baby, and the solo episodes are the real heart and soul of Inline G. So originally this week, I wanted to actually find a flute maker to interview, go and have a chat with him. But the online interviews, I'm kind of done with them, lads, because they just don't have the vibe that I want them to have. So unless it's someone I really, really will never, ever, ever be able to get otherwise, I'm not doing online interviews. And to be totally honest, have you guys ever met some of the flute makers? They're fucking weirdos. So I need to find one that's like kind of normal, because flute repair guys and like makers, a lot of them are really fucking weird. They're not good podcast guests, especially the ones in this country in Germany. So maybe when I go to America in the summer, or if I get into America, that's the time. But until then, I can't. So I didn't get a maker on, but the cog started turning. You know, the old brain, old Inline G was ticking away. The ideas were in motion, and aside from doing a bit of smooching, nothing was going to stop me from making this episode, come hell nor high water. So we have got, when you think about it, we've got such an array of beautiful, handmade, gorgeous flutes to choose from these days, to buy. You can go out and buy some incredible instruments. And these flutes are being made all over the world with all kinds of incredible materials and beautiful, world-class craftsmanship. So if you were going out to buy a new flute, how the fuck can you look at all these different brands, all these different materials, all these different head cut joints and sizes and blah, 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 and choose the best flute? And what are the differences between them all, really? And really, does it even fucking matter? Does it really make that much of a difference what fucking flute you play? So, if you're looking for a new flute, this episode is for you. If you're looking for validation on why you spent the money on the flute you did, this episode is for you. Or, if you just enjoy listening to another straight white male talk with confidence on topics he's poorly researched on the internet, this episode is for you. Because the flute you play not only shapes your sound, but it shapes your identity. Also, if you sniggered at me saying flute you play, fucking grow up. This is a very serious podcast. I'm getting fed up with that. The amount of replies I had to my story where I asked people what kind of flute you play, and I go, I play the skin flute, it tastes glorious. That's fucking ridiculous, right? Grow up, you lot. We are beyond flute innuendos here. We're 102 episodes in. We've heard them all. Grow up. Well, that was funny. That comment particularly, skin flute, and he said tastes glorious, was pretty funny because it was from an actual gay man, an authority on the subject, if you will. But skin flute aside, this is where we're actually going to start this episode, the linguistic implications and meanings of the word flute, because it is significant. What is a flute? And I've talked about definitions on this podcast many times before, and how definitions are fluid, even within one language, but especially across multiple languages, translations are different. But within one language, if you get a definition of a word and you go to another dictionary, you will get a slightly altered variation of that definition, which goes to show that defining things is not a science, it's an art. But anyway, we're going to go back into this. Flute, definition. I went up, Cambridge Dictionary, blah, blah, blah. Definition of a flute: a tube-shaped musical instrument with a hole that you blow across at one end while holding the tube out horizontally to one side. Now, it's cited here as being first used in English by Geoffrey Chaucer, none other, the guy who wrote the Canterbury Tales, which is actually shite. I tried to read it, it's shite. But anyway, he first used the word flute, and that was the first time we've seen the word flute in English back in 1384. So its etymology has its roots in French. And that's where the plot thickens, dear listener. Because whilst the term flute is widely accepted now in English, even by this definition, to be the transverse flute, i.e. the one that goes out the side, that is not the case in other languages. And we should be educated about these things, especially in classical music, where it is a European-centric art, and English is not the lingua franca of classical music. It never was, and it probably never will be. So we have to understand the other languages. So, for example, in French, the word flûte, F-L-U-T-E, spelt the same way with a little hat on the U, flûte. If you Google the definition of flute, which came from the French dictionary, I can't remember which one, I think it's Académie Française, it says here, flûte ou flûte est un terme générique désignant un instrument de musique à vent dont le son est créé par l'oscillation d'un jet d'air d'auteur d'un biseau doigt, en encoche ou en anneau. So for the people that don't speak French there, that was quite good, wasn't it? C'était super, hein? Ouais, je parle français, hein. Je suis très quoi? Franchement, je suis magnifique. For those who don't speak French, I'll translate that to you. I'm such a wanker. Flute, or flute, is a generic term for a wind musical instrument whose sound is created by the oscillation of a jet of air around a straight bevel, notch, or ring. Now, this is where it's interesting. It doesn't say anything about playing it out to the fucking side. Because the French always clarify, when you talk in French, you say la flûte traversière, the transverse flute. You do not say la flûte. Maybe if you're talking within flute players and you know what you mean, you say that. But if you're talking to someone who doesn't play the flute, if you say, I'm a musician, and they say, what do you play? I say, je joue de la flûte. Hein? They go, what kind of flute? Do you mean traversière or flûte à bec? Okay? Because flûte à bec is the word for recorder. And they specify that very, very, very clearly. And also, if you look up Flöte in German, now, my German pronunciation is not going to be as good as my French, but I'm going to give it a lash anyway. So, rohrförmiges Blasinstrument aus Holz oder Metall, diesen Tonlöcher mit Klappen oder den Fingern geschlossen werden. Tubular. Okay, sorry, not tubular. That's the English bit. So, geschlossen werden. So, tubular wind instrument made of wood or metal whose tone codes are covered with keys or fingers. Okay? Again, Flöte. That is a word in German, but you do not say, ich spiele Flöte. You say, ich spiele Querflöte. Querflöte is the one that goes out to the side. Flöte, again, is a generic term. If you say the Flöte, then you could be referring to Querflöte, which goes out to the side, or transverse flute, or the recorder, which is Blockflöte. And there's actually a couple of other ones. Again, Flöte is a generic term for all those things, including recorders, basically anything with any stick that you blow into, including your loved ones. So these definitions, not only are they important, because you should be educated in other languages. I'm sick of Americans telling me about things that are European-centric, okay? It comes from these languages, right? Fuck you guys. You barely speak English over there. Never mind anything else, all right? Listen to us Europeans. We're educated. But the definitions also go to show how narrow our thinking can be, and how we are conditioned, especially in classical music, to accept our current reality as the standard. The flutes we play now, so for the purpose of the rest of this podcast, when I talk about the flute, I'm referring to the modern C Boehm flute, or the modern Boehm flute. Yours and I's, these bad boys here, right? The one with all the cafes and the fingers. But in Irish, we say the flute. You don't say I play the Irish flute. You say I play the flute. So whatever. But These flutes we play, the Bowen flutes, they are modern, surprisingly modern, actually. And an understanding of what preceded them is essential to really being connected to our instruments, because it gives you that sense that you're part of something greater, and it gives you a little bit of identity as a flute player to know where we came from. So you've all heard this thing, the flute is the oldest instrument ever discovered. And that actually is true. The oldest instrument was another flute, and then they discovered another one. But the oldest instrument ever discovered was a flute, and it's dated to be about 35 to 40,000 years old. Now, I haven't got a fucking clue what that means. 35,000 years old, anything pre 1700, don't give a fuck about, okay? 300 years is as much as my brain can comprehend. 35,000 years. I don't know what the fuck that is. When I found that out, I know people are very impressed by that. I was like, was there humans? Was there dinosaurs? Was there woolly mammoths? I don't have a fucking clue, man. So I Googled it. The Paleolithic era, which means the humans that designed this flute that was discovered were Neanderthals. Now, I've heard Neanderthals because people have called me that on this podcast when I get too drunk. But I had to Google again what's the difference between a Neanderthal and a Homo sapien. And a Homo sapien is when a sapien loves another sapien. It's when a sapien and another sapien really love each other, but they're the same. And they listen to Lady Gaga. Oh, man. No, Homo sapiens, okay. So these were designed by Neanderthals because Homo sapiens weren't in Europe and Asia at the time of the Paleolithic era. So Homo sapiens were coming out of Africa. Europe was still the old Neanderthals. Basically, Neanderthals are just like a slightly older version of humans. A little bit more stupid, a little bit more thick. Thick in both ways, stupid and chunky boys. Now, this flute was discovered in Deutschland, of all places, lovely Germany, down in the Hohle Fels Cave, which I had to Google again, but it's down in Ulm, which I know. Ulm is not that far away from Stuttgart, which isn't that far away from where I am here in Köln. So we're talking a couple of hours on the train, and I might go down someday. I don't know where the actual fucking flute is. I've Googled and Googled and Googled. The name it's given is the Hohle Fels Flute, because it was founded in that cave. We can't find out where it is, if it still exists, if it's in a museum somewhere, no idea. But anyway, this wee flute, by the way, you've all heard about it. It's only 22 centimeters, which is above average, by the way. I don't know what you're talking about. It's enough. You don't need any bigger than that. Why would you need bigger? Maybe it has a good personality. 22 centimeters and 5 holes, and it has a wee hole at the top to blow into. But it's not an embouchure. It's not like these. You don't blow across it, and you don't really blow into it either. It's a bit of a weird thing. I mean, I guess it's 35,000 years old, so give them a break. And it's made from griffin bone, which is cool as fuck. Now, this is blowing my mind, by the way, when I Googled this. The 5 holes make a pentatonic scale, the E-flat pentatonic scale, which is mad. And I'm going to let you guys hear what it sounds like, because this blew my fucking mind. This is what these wee flutes sounds like. So, here we go. Man, that sounds fucking great. That sounds better than half of you lot. That sounds class. 35,000 years old and it sounds like that. It's fucking lit. So that flute is the oldest instrument ever discovered. Not even the oldest flute, the oldest instrument. And it was a huge deal discovering it because it showed how advanced society was at that point, that they'd already created something like that with a scale purely for the purposes of entertainment. It's incredible. So we are the OGs of instruments, flute players. Be connected to this. You're part of a long lineage of music going back to the Neanderthals. Now, a quick rundown of the flute since then, okay? We're going to blast through this as quick as we can because it's not really that interesting, to be totally honest. Flutes have been popping up for a long time in countries like China, India, you have the Banzuri, South America, commonly backdating to 900 BC, so 900 before the Battle of Yavin. Now, they're usually made out of bone, clay, or whatever else the fuck they could find. Often they were more like recorders, okay? They weren't transverse, which is, again, is why the linguistics are important, because we call these things a flute when it suits us. The wee flute that they found, we're like, oh, it's the oldest instrument ever, we're so proud of it. And you're like, you wouldn't call that a flute now, you would call it a recorder. Which is why we refuse to let recorder players have fuck all. We just, like, no, that's ours. Fuck you guys. Recorder players can go fuck off. We want it as flute players. We should be embracing each other. We're the same people. Now, it was always just finger holes, so there was no keys, obviously. It was just, all these flutes were 5 or 6 holes covered with your fingers, okay? And amazingly, they're nearly always tuned to pentatonic scales, which shows how early humans already had an understanding of music. And you know what's funny? Some of you out there, and I know this for a fact, because I've studied with people like this, who went to music college and still don't know what a fucking pentatonic scale is. That's a disgrace, okay? You should be learning what a pentatonic scale is, because apart from classical music, every type of music uses a pentatonic scale across the world, okay? It's the building blocks of so many different folk music and jazz as well and blues, and you need to know what it is. So here, don't worry, inline G's here. Pentatonic scale, penta, pent, 5, pentagram, pentecost, all that shit, pentagon. 5-note scale. It's kind of like a major scale, okay? But it's without the 4th and the 7th, okay? And the reason those are out is because those are the ones that have a distance of a half tone or a semitone with the note preceding it or going after it. So there's no half tone intervals in a pentatonic scale. It's all tones, okay? It's a very pure sound. It's a very emotional sound. It's very jazzy. It's very snazzy. Not unlike this necklace. Have you guys all seen my necklace, by the way? I'm turning into what I hated. Honestly, I'm sure the people who watch this podcast regularly are like, what the fuck is going on with Gareth in the last few weeks? Because every week I've come with something new. I've got a watch, I've got a ring, I've got this necklace with a harp on it, and I've got my tattoo. You see my tattoo, guys? I got my first tattoo, which I fucking love. It's a pint of Guinness and a little glass of Cuz, which is the local beer here in Cologne. Because I love pints of Guinness and I love Cuz, and it's got a beautiful little meaning. Like, every time I've done a major performance, or I've fucked up a performance, or I've had an audition, or I've had a major life event, the time I've digested it and expressed it with my friends and really processed it has usually been over a pint of Guinness. No matter what country I've been in as well, it's usually over a pint of Guinness. So because of that, I decided to get a lovely little pint of Guinness, and it's very symbolic. I'm such a fucking hipster. But anyway, all these wee shite flutes, whatever cavemen used them for, I don't know. Did they charm snakes out of baskets or tooted them to get the ride? I don't have a fucking clue. But ChatGPT at this point told me to go fuck myself. I'd used up my free plan, so you're not getting any more education here now, lads. But you're not missing much anyway, okay? From 900 BC up until a couple of hundred years ago, you're not missing a lot. The flute's the flute and it's shite, okay? Now, you skip forward to the Baroque era. Baroque era, 1600s, 1700s, you know this already. The transverse flute starts becoming the main instrument in the flute family. Now, basically, why was the transverse flute, the one that goes out to the side, more popular than the recorder? Basically, it was easier to hold, and it had a more stable sound with a bigger dynamic range. That's essentially it. Recorders are shite. And today's opening section, what I've talked about in the first, 15 minutes of this podcast, that is as much time as I'm going to give recorders for the rest of this fucking podcast. Recorders are shite. We should get rid of them. We don't need them. Okay? So, until the Baroque era, and even actually at this point still, mainly made out of wood. Flutes are always out of wood, okay? And they're mainly still holes that you cover with your fingers. Now, bit by bit, different makers in different parts of Europe started, because it's only happening in Europe because America didn't exist at this time, okay? We have pubs in Ireland older than your fucking country. But anyway, makers in Europe started adding keys on here and there. Just make it a little bit easier to maybe play a G sharp. When you're playing an A minor, it's handy to be able to play a G sharp without having to fucking bend 3 fingers backwards and stand on your arse. So they started adding 1 or 2 keys on, and then, one thing leads to another, and it starts to snowball, and you've got more and more keys. So you're thinking of people like Otteter in France, Jacques Otteter, or the big man, Quantz, our boy, Quantz, here in Deutschland, in Germany. They started adding more keys. They even started experimenting with like the length of the foot joint and the length of the head joint and alternative foot joints to play in different keys, all this shit to try and make it more advanced as an instrument. And they kept adding and adding. Some of these flutes get really complicated and weird in the Baroque and classical era, where they're trying to add as much as they can to make them as playable, and keys are going in all kinds of weird ways and up and down, fucking roundwards and out your arse and blah blah blah. But anyway, then another German lad, trusted German to come up with this, designs the modern flute. He reinvents everything and changes the history of the flute forever. And that is a guy called Theobald Boehm, or Boehm, okay? Theobald Boehm auf Deutsch. And that's it. When he reinvents and introduces this Boehm system, the flute has changed forever. And it's this one here. It's the one you guys are playing. It's the classical flute, sorry. That's the Boehm system. And the Boehm system basically means where he puts the keys, the space between them, etc., so you can play a full chromatic scale. And this is a big one. Now, it's stuck, obviously, because we're still using it, and there's no other system available. It didn't stick in France. They got a bit of resistance in France, which wouldn't be like them, wouldn't it, to resist something? But apart from that, it really worked. I mean, the French are lazy bastards sometimes when it comes to these things. If there was work in the bed, they'd sleep on the floor. That's the only reason they eat snails in France. It's the only thing the lazy bastards can catch. So Boehm designs this new system, and Louis Lot in France, or Louis Lot, essentially perfects it. He makes it better. So the boom flute is what we call the flute in our modern vernacular. When I talk about the flute, and we're talking about these flutes, we're talking about the boom system flute. Now, here's the crack on how that went through to our modern makers. Because Louis Lot's knocking about in the 1800s, early 1900s, that kind of time. But all the big brands that you know and love now aren't there yet, really, okay? And there's a transition period where when the boom flute came to our modern makers. And it's really interesting how this starts up. I really enjoyed finding this out. So, essentially, when the boom flute came out and it reinvented it, flute making became a big business. The flute became a more attractive instrument. That's why we have a huge gap in what composers write for the flute. Baroque, we have amazing stuff. We have Bach and Telemann and all that beautiful stuff. Early classical, we still have Mozart, bit of Haydn, all that kind of shit. Classical and early romantic, we have fuck all. We have nothing of note, really. Like Reinecke, but like, let's be honest. When people like Tchaikovsky and Brahms and Mendelssohn are knocking about and we get fuck all, tells you they just didn't want to write for the flute. The boom flute suddenly makes people want to write for it. And that's why we have people like Debussy, Ravel, and Lessis, and Poulenc, and all these people writing incredible music for the flute. And these days, we still have it. It took the boom flute to do that. And then, therefore, flute making became a big business. People wanted to buy boom flutes to play this class music on it. So, it's business. We have to think of this. So, Boehm had a patent for this design, and he sold it to different countries. So in Germany, it was Boehm's. He made the boom flutes in Germany. In France, he sold the patent to Louis Lot or Louis Lo, which is why we get those beautiful things. Now, in the UK, the patent was originally sold to Ruddle Cart, who no longer exists, sadly. They disappeared as an entity in 1985. They were bought over by another company, and then they officially got dissolved in 1985, and they're part of some other thing. But Ruddle Cart were a massive player in flute making. Massive. Maybe too big, to be totally honest. So the patent the Boehm sold them was for the UK and its overseas territories and occupied states. Okay? And because the UK and England has invaded half the fucking world, it was very valuable to have. So they could sell flutes in all the different places of the world where the UK has fucked them. Because, again, England's invaded everywhere. So this particular patent is really powerful. Okay? So Ruddle Cart start churning out these flutes and they make more and more and the demand is going up and up and up and up. And it gets too big. And they go very corporate. They get a bit too big for their bootsies. And especially post-World War II, Ruddle Cart started to get carried away. So in 1959, a couple of lads who were working for Ruddle Cart went solo. They left the place and said, fuck you guys, it's too corporate. You aren't concentrating on quality anymore. You just want quantity. We want to make world-class instruments. We're going to start our own group. Fuck you guys, we're going to start our own group. We're going solo, and we're going to call the band the Flute Makers Guild. You might have heard of the Flute Makers Guild. Quality instruments, really exceptional quality. They were in London. It was a group of flute makers getting together and making beautiful instruments. You'll still see them pop up. If you go on the Just Flutes website, you'll see a couple of Flute Makers Guild flutes pop up. Sometimes they put the mark of the Flute Makers Guild on it, and sometimes they'll put their individual maker name on it. Now, one person particularly who was famous in the Flute Makers Guild is a guy called Albert Cooper. If you're not familiar with Albert Cooper, it's a fucking disgrace because this lad really changed flute making. And he only died like 14 years ago. Died in 2011. And you might know him more famously because he eventually teamed up with Brannan. So you have the Brannan brothers, brand. A lot of their flutes are called Brannan Coopers. And people often mistake the two or use them interchangeably, Brannan or Brannan Cooper. Not quite. Brannan Cooper was a brand together where Albert Cooper became the president emeritus. I hate the way Americans use that term, but whatever the fuck it is, emeritus of Brannan. And when Brannan designed flutes with his own scale in mind, they called them the Brannan Cooper flutes. And they're incredible instruments. Brannan Coopers are the creme de la creme for me. Because he designed a slightly different scale of the tuning and basically the spacing of the holes and the size of the holes of how the tuning works. The Cooper scale is amazing. I'm a big fan of it. So anyway, the Brits were doing that in the 1800s, okay? But as time goes on, the Americans start to catch up. America's got its industrial revolution. It's starting to get money. It wants in on the action. The Yanks want a bit of that money. Now, the first big flute company in America to open up was Haynes, W.S. Haynes. You're all familiar with them. They were founded in 1888 in Boston. Now, after that, Powell popped up in 1926. This is fucking funny, by the way. I went on to Powell's website because ChatGPT told me they were founded in 1888 as well. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. Powell were definitely 1926. And I went on and I quote from Powell's website here. And fuck, you can go look this up in like the Our Story section. It tells you the story about Vern Powell, who was a jeweler and he made his own flute and then he started making flutes and then he opened up a company. But there's a wee line in that says he worked for another flute company. for years, he worked between 1910 and 1926, essentially. He worked for another flute company. And then he launched Paul, the brand himself, in 1926. That's a fucking snide wee dig there from Paul to not say the name of the other flute company. It's ridiculous. Obviously, the other company was Haynes. And if you go to the Haynes website, they say that Paul worked there. On the website, they're very clear about it. Yeah, Vern Q. Paul worked here for a while, and then he went and started his own company. They're happy to put the information on. Paul are being snide wee bastards and not putting it up there. But anyway, Paul started up in 1926. And also, this Boston thing, something I would love to go and visit. But a lot of the American flute makers are based in Boston. So you have Paul, Haynes, and Brannan are all over there in Boston. I think Nagahara are based there as well, who have a really cool story. So I want to go to Boston someday, go to a Red Sox game, learn that accent, get whatever food they have there, meet some Irish lads, and do some fluting. So if anyone has a spare bedroom in Boston that they want to put me up in, I would fucking love it. I've been once when I was 17. I loved the city. East Coast for the win, man. So anyway, the Yanks started to change the game in flute making. And honestly, they kind of ran it. When Ronald Carp were running out of things, the Yanks, Paul and Haynes especially, were making great flutes. Especially in and around the 50s, 60s, they really started to kick off and produce world-class instruments, and they were dominating the game. Then the Japanese came along in the 1960s. So technically, actually, Muramatsu, for example, they were founded in 1923. So they actually were a lot older. But Japanese flutes were hitting the markets much more in the 60s. And that's why they really started to ship worldwide. They became a big brand. Sankyo were formed in 1968. Represent, up to Sankyo. And Miyazawa were formed in 1969. And a fun combination of this America-Japan sort of duel in flute making is Nagahara. Because Nagahara himself, he worked for Brannan, I think. I should have checked this. Brannan, I think, and he worked in Boston, and then he opened up his own place in Boston as well. So Nagahara based in Boston, and they're still going on today. And he did that only in the 90s, I think Nagahara's been going. It's not a particularly new, or not a particularly old brand. Nagahara Flutes, by the way, huge fan. Obviously, because Jimmy plays them as well, so yeah. But that power struggle between the Yanks and the Japanese in terms of flute making is still going on today. They are kind of dominating the game now. All the really major brands of flute pen, especially the high-end ones, they're made by Americans or Japanese. The Brits aren't really getting involved in that. The French aren't really involved. The Germans aren't really involved. Now, the student market is the big one at the minute. And that's kind of been cornered by Yamaha, who are doing an amazing job. And they started making wind instruments in 1966. So they're well into the game as well. And Trevor James, of course, who are doing amazing stuff with alto flutes too. They're doing a great market work in that. They were formed in 1979 in London. They're British. It's not their fault. They were born with it. Now, that's all the major brands kind of summed up, I think. I don't think I'm missing any. Let me see if I'm missing any. Rollo Card, Brannan, Paul, Haynes, Yamaha, Sankyo, Muramatsu, Miyazawa, Cooper, Trevor James. Yeah, got them all. One day I'm going to do a big episode on them because the ins and outs and the drama and the relationships and the fallouts within flute making companies is ridiculous. It's insane. Even now, the drama that's going on with the different flute companies is fucking wild. But before we go on to all the differences, I'm talking a lot about business. Just quickly, allow me to talk a little bit about business because I need some money. The Inline G podcast is free, and it'll always be free. That is a motherfucking guarantee. But if you wish to donate to the podcast, you can now do so through the Patreon. On the screen now is the address, and for the audio listeners, it is patreon.com/the Inline G Flute podcast. Lads, it costs you €5 a month, whatever that is in your currency, and with that, you're keeping the podcast alive. I do everything in this podcast: audio design, video design, graphic design, editing, post, clips, social media, traveling to do guest scripts. It's a shitload of work. For an episode a week is a shitload of work. Sponsors are not on this podcast, and they never will be. I'm fed up with them because they always oh, you can't swear, you can't talk about this, you can't talk about that, you're being too controversial. They can go fuck themselves. We have the biggest flute podcast in the world now, and it's 100% listener funded. That is insane. The biggest flute podcast in the world is 100% listener funded. Let me say it again for the people in the back. The biggest, it's fucking class. And I have you to thank for it. So if you can afford to sign up and support the podcast, please do so. It's a $5 a month. It's Patreon. There's no weird fees. You can jump in one month, jump out another month. You won't get anything extra really for it. You're in the community. you'll get like a little present and a couple of things like that, and you get priority access, but you won't get extra episodes because I really believe Inline G should be free for everybody. So I won't be making extra episodes for patrons, but you will get other things. But mainly you're paying me for my work as an artist. The sponsors don't want to. You're part of this community, you're growing it, and there's some big news coming up about how I'm going to push this forward. So if you can afford it, it's amazing. Go out and pay me for my work as an artist. I make an episode of this podcast every week for a month. If you saw me at the end of the month and you thought, fuck, I'd buy Gareth a pint to say thank you, I got 4 hours of entertainment, I'll give him €5. You wouldn't even get a pint for €5 these days. You can do that digitally. If you can afford it, please do. It's incredibly appreciated. It's keeping this podcast alive. And to the patrons who are already there, I love you so much. You have no idea how much it means to me. And listen, if you can't afford it, you might be a musician like myself. Times are hard, cost of living crisis, Donald Trump is fucking America. If you can't afford it, it's fine. Someone who can afford it is paying so that you can listen for free. It is a system based on kindness and soundness. Thank you very much. So, you've got all these major players out there making flutes out of all kinds of materials, and this is really important. You know, silver, gold, wood, platinum. They're all kinds of wonderful materials. Now, first of all, I'm going to say something here. Nobody on God's green earth can tell me that one of these top flute makers is definitively better than another. It's not fucking true. It's horseshit if you say that one of them is better. Just bollocks, okay? It is hugely down to personal taste. And that also goes for the material. Do not, for the love of God, do not listen to these pricks in flute form who are always like, well, actually, there's been a study and the material is proven not affect the sound or the tonal quality of the flute whatsoever. And it's some bullshit, loosey-goosey study from some shitty private American university. As if I'm going to take anything that American academics say. Considering what's going on over there right now, yeah, I'm going to listen to an American study. And I've read the studies. They are so fucking loose. There's so many variables that are not included in it. It is dog shit. So I'm not listening to those pricks in flute form. Fucking we nerds, that's what they are. And they're always shit flute players as well. Don't listen to them. Actually, the material is exactly identical. It doesn't matter. Fuck up, okay? There's actually a study going on here, and I can't talk too much about this, but I've seen it, and it's not finished yet, and it's been going for years. That's being done in Aachen University. Aachen's just down the road from here, is one of the world leaders for engineering as a university and as a city. It's a sausage fest as well in Aachen. There's no women up there. It's just engineering. But there's a massive study being done by someone, I won't say who, into the materials of flutes, also with vintage materials. There's even an hypothesis as part of this study that the reason that certain volcanic eruptions in Europe in the 1900s and 1800s is what gave Louis Lot flutes their like unique sound, which because the volcanic ash that spread across Europe affected the metal composition. That's how in-depth this study is going. It's proper legit. It's not American. It's real. And once it comes out, it will prove once and for all that the material, of course, affects the sound. But the reason we know that, also, I really shouldn't be talking about this. I can see a red dot in that window. The reason we know that sound doesn't affect it. Okay, two things. The proof is in the pudding. All right, lads? Every fucking top flute player in the world, every one of them, since time began, or since flutes were invented, have said they hear a difference in material, and they have changed materials, and they have looked for new materials. All the top makers say that materials make a difference. They spend a huge amount of money and resources on researching the materials, the alloys, the blends to get the exact quality that they want. You think they wouldn't have done these studies, and some prick on Facebook is like, no, you're actually wrong because of the shitty study with 3 flutes. You don't think they've fucking checked the amount of money that's in flute making over the last 100 years. You don't think they've checked if it actually matters or not? Of course not. But it's always some loud American on Facebook who can't play 3 notes that says it. And it's always Facebook. It's always fucking Facebook. This podcast is not doing well with Facebook viewers. It's all promotion on Instagram and TikTok. Facebook, people hate this podcast. They hear me say motherfucking N9G in the first 5 seconds. They're just like, right, turn that off. Oh, they clutch their pearls. Oh, my heart. Fucking idiots. But anyway, the second thing I'll say, there is a huge degree of marketing when it comes to flute making, okay? Gold flutes are class. I love gold flutes. I play a gold flute, and it's wonderful. But they are not better, okay? It is a question of taste, and also gold flutes are way too fucking expensive. But some people are buying them, so voila, if you're willing to pay for it, that's the price you charge. Most gold flutes are not played by professional flute players. On a musician's wage, you have fuck all chance of buying a gold flute, especially if you're in America and Britain. If you live in Germany, it's different, or France, the orchestras often pay for your instruments, but flute players' salaries are not paying gold flutes. Most gold flutes, especially the higher carat ones, are being played by rich hobbyists. They're played by fucking dentists and brain surgeons and shit like that who do it on the side. And they can afford it. My dream flute, my absolute dream flute, is a 14 karat gold Brandon Cooper. It's my absolute dream. But it's like 50 G's, man. I think I'm going to drop 50 G's on a flute. If I had 50 grand, I'd drink it, all right? Do you know how many pints of Guinness you can get with 50 grand? You think I'm going to play on a fucking flute? Flute companies make most of their money off the amateur market. The vast majority is made from students and rich hobbyists. That's the vast majority. Trying to sell the rich player or the professional players, it's a fool's game. You're not going to get any money out of it. They want the professionals so they can market more, but that's it. So they will do anything. If you're an amateur, especially a rich one, they will do anything to convince you to part with your money. Do not fall for it. Because I'm not sponsored by any flute company, and I never will be. I love Sankyo because they're my brand, but all the flute companies are great, and I will openly slate any single one of them. They're all money-grabbing serpents. They're all doing shady business things as well. They're not horrible, okay? It's part of the game. It's the industry, especially in America. It's just the way it is. But they're not your mates, all right? They're ruthless business people that want your money. Now, my flute, I will talk about it briefly. I play, for those who don't know, a 5 karat gold Sankyo. I love it, okay? They stopped making the 5 karat gold flutes in the 90s, I think, because the alloy just wasn't very stable. It discolored quite a lot. They had to return a few of them to plate them in 14 karat gold very thinly because it went discolored. That was it. That was the only problem. The alloy was never stable. It sounds like a fucking dream. I suppose it counts as vintage because it's like 30-something years old now. And they don't make them. From what I heard, Sankyo are still trying to get that alloy right, but they haven't managed it yet. The Ormite flutes of Paul or something kind of in that genre, and Brandon have done some things as well, but that gold-silver mix is very hard to get right. It's got that lovely champagne gold color, it's got silver keys, it's got inline G, and it's got C-foot. That's exactly what I wanted. Now, I love Sankyo. Do I think they're better than the other brands? Absolutely not. They're one of these top makers. They're all amazing. I would play any flute. One of these handmade flutes from one of these top makers, I'd play any of them. I'd be happy to play it. Because 95% of the sound that comes out of that flute is about the player. And the extra 5%, okay, that's what separates the men from the boys, but still, 95% is the player. It's practice, lads, all right? I remember once I went to Magady's house for a lesson. Magady Mounier, for those not familiar. If you haven't heard her name in this podcast, where the fuck have you been? In my opinion, the best player in the world, my favourite player. She plays a 14 karat gold Brannan. I was playing a silver Miyazawa at the time, nothing special. The 4.0 or the 4.11, isn't it? Whatever it is, nothing amazing, like a $3,000 flute. I thought there was something wrong with it. I gave it to Magaly and she was like, oh, let me just check. She played it, and that moment I was like, she sounds exactly the same. Like 95%, I'd still go, oh, that's Magaly. And that's a moment where I realized the flute doesn't make that much of a difference. She was playing on my shitty flute, and I was like, why does it sound like that when I play it? Because most of the sound comes from the player. And one huge thing that people forget about, and flute companies will not tell you about, is the placebo effect. And we often talk about placebo as a negative. It's almost like a gullibility test that we use in modern vernacular. But placebos are used. They're genuine tools in the medical industry. They're still used as legitimate treatment. So for those who don't know, placebo effect, it's in the medical industry, it's like giving someone a sugar pill and telling them it's a real pill because the placebo effect. Now, it does work. Okay, I've got a list here of the reasons it work. Expectation alters perception. Okay, so when they believe it's going to help, the brain anticipates improvement, and it does genuinely reduce things like pain and anxiety. Brain chemistry responds to belief. That is 100% true. If you believe in something, your brain will release endorphins, dopamine, and serotonin, which influence the pain perception and your mood. So it has a legitimate chemical reason. Like drug effects, by the way, like when you do an MRI, you do MRI to see what effects the brain has, drugs have on the brain. They've done that with placebo effect, and they can see similar results. Okay. This actually fucking happens, okay? The neural pathways are still the same purely through placebo, okay? Conditioning and learned responses to repeated medical experiences can condition the body to respond positively. There's all kinds of shit here. The doctor-patient reality or relationship plays a huge role in it. There's all kinds of shit. But basically, placebos work. They are accepted a long time in the medical community to work. They are legitimate treatment for things. So, when we're choosing our flute, the placebo effect is real and it plays a role, okay? For example, if you're told that gold flutes are better, okay? I think that gold flutes are better. I love gold flutes, okay? They're better for me, okay? Why? Because I've been told so long gold flutes are warmer and they're richer. And I've listened to that so much that when I hear a gold flute or I play a gold flute, I subconsciously choose to listen to those qualities more than anything else. It's like that thing when someone's scared of spiders. When someone's scared of spiders and like, oh, I have a sixth sense for when spiders are in the room. No, they don't. What they do is they look up every single fucking time they walk into a room. If they don't see a spider, their brain doesn't recognize it. When they do see a spider, the brain goes, fuck, there it is again. It's selective vision, whatever. Selective memory. It's choosing what you want to hear based on bias. That happens when I hear a gold flute. I'm like, it sounds like a gold flute. Probably fucking doesn't. If I did a blind test, I wouldn't know. It's also precious. Gold is valuable. It's money. And I think when you're playing a prestigious instrument like that, it's made of gold. Like it's fucking gold. You look at it, you're like, oh man, that's a fucking Rolls Royce of an instrument. It gives you confidence. You're like, yeah, I am playing a gold flute. And that's a huge thing for me. Real physical outcomes from a psychological origin. That is the placebo effect. Okay? And also it gives you prestige of the instrument, gives you this kind of performance enhancing mindset. Elite players play gold flutes. I'm playing a gold flute. I'm going to be an elite player. It boosts you. It gives you that top level feeling of like, yeah, I'm in with the big boys now. We're playing with these lads. And there is that feedback loop. Obviously, we're talking about dopamine responses and serotonin responses when you play a great instrument. You're like, I love this. It looks great. I feel like I look great when I'm doing it. Then your brain has a feedback loop where it goes, here's some dopamine, here's some serotonin, and you go happy days, and you start playing music better. And then it goes back again, and it goes back again, and you're just running it on loop, and before you know it, you're going to come. Sorry, but that's okay. That's not what happens. I hope not. But there is a feedback loop when it comes to serotonin and dopamine. So yeah, and trained again, you'll hear it. Okay, especially when your teacher or your flute maker or a seller tells you, oh, your tone's so warm or round or dark. These are all bollocks. Okay, and we're going to get to why they're bollocks in a minute because it's unbelievable. I play gold, right? When I got this flute, I was not 100% convinced. I didn't look at this flute and go, oh my God, that's my dream flute. Okay, but it was gold and it was in my price range. And I always wanted to play a gold flute. And the confidence it gave me, I would have quit the flute if it wasn't for getting that instrument. The boost that gave me when I was in Paris of being able to afford a gold flute, because it was only €8,000, and to be on stage in a gold flute. And to be honest, having a flute that looked like Magalies and looked like Catherine's, my teachers, and the legitimacy I felt going on stage with a gold flute, and people were like, oh my God, it's gold. I was like, yeah, you're fucking right, it's gold. It gave me such a boost. It made me want to practice more. It made me feel like a superstar, and still does. That flute is gorgeous. People always point it out, and they have this unconscious thing of like, oh my God, it's a gold flute. He must be good. And I'm like, yeah, you're fucking right, I am. Okay? It changed my playing at a core level. Is it placebo? Is it not? It's a whole mixture of things that are pretty much impossible to measure. So I want to end this podcast by quickly talking about some of the things you guys have said about your flutes, because you see the language people use. It's impossible to describe this. This is art. This is not science. There's a certain amount of science in it. But if one type of flute was better than all the others, we'd all be fucking playing them, okay? And that is the bottom line. So I asked people on Instagram, what flutes do you play and why? Okay? I'm going to give you some examples here. So one response, I play a 70s silver Muramatsu, vintage, cheap as piss, and sounds lush. So I asked him, why do you play it? It was the only one in the shop on my budget. There you are. First reason. Because you can afford it, you're going to like it, obviously, okay? He said, the legato and colour palettes are beautiful, and it's super cool. And knowing James Gully played something similar for a lot of his career too. There you go. One of the first things he says about the reason he loves his flute is like, oh, Jimmy played something similar. Immediately, you're making that connection. Every time he picks up his flute, you'll be thinking, yeah, Jimmy played one of these. If he can do it, I can fucking do it. Immediate confidence, okay? And with the vintage flute things, people have talked a lot about the vintage flute thing, and actually what this person said was really interesting. Vintage wooden flutes, things like cocos wood and granadilla wood are now endangered. Okay, so there's a slight environmental thing to not making them anymore and finding them and playing them from a pre-existing thing. So we don't want to make granadilla flutes anymore. It's an endangered wood. If you can find a granadilla flute, it's got a bit of specialness to it. And it also gives you that lovely little thing of like, yeah, I'm looking after the planet. Someone else said, I play a Brannan 10K with a wooden Manca head joint. It gives me access to many colours and is so reliable. So he said, I had a gold fan. It was actually just heavy and aggressive. I wanted an olive wood head joint. It was a lot more flexible and comfortable, but had a defect and I had to swap it out for granadilla. I didn't try it before I got it, but I love the way it gives me a balanced sound. Balanced sound. I love the blend of materials. More flexible sound says here. Projects more. These are all the words you're starting to hear. And that's with Brannan. There's here people talking about an Arista and said, why did you choose to play Arista? Quite a unique one, smaller maker. Closest to Louis Lot with a modern scale and a bigger sound for modern playing. Also, again, heavily influenced by Wib, William Bennett. Again, if you know someone else played it, you want to do it. And that's a common theme with these things. Someone also played a Tomasi flute. And I said, that's a very interesting one. Why'd you do that? And said, well, my teacher back in the day worked with Flutissimo, brought like 10 or 15 flutes back, and I tried them all. Tomasi was the one I liked. That's it. Simple. Zoe, she actually gave me her permission to share the story because it's fucking class. Zoe Sorrell, who is Flutes and Poems on Instagram, very cool woman. She plays Catherine Hoover's flute. So Catherine Hoover's old Brandon Cooper. Oof. And she said, I played Catherine Hoover's Brandon Cooper and it has her spirit inside of it. She said, I kept picking her flute out of a blind trial lineup because I swear music was just falling out of it. And Flute Pro Shop, who engineered this whole connection, then told me it had been Hoover's. And this is about a week after Catherine Hoover died. And they had a feeling that I'd be a good match for the flute, so they already told Hoover's husband about me. Anyways, he then looked into me and my work and agreed he wanted me to adopt her flute and sold it to me for a really good price and then sent me a massive box of Catherine's personal things. This is a gorgeous story. And she's tried to become as much of a champion of her work since as possible. It's especially why playing her works on her flute, because it really feels like a step back and it plays itself. It's been the coolest journey. That's it. That's what it's all about, lads. These are not tools. They are almost breathing things, flutes. They are beautiful. But my old flute, it got sold. I want to know where it is. I want to know. I sold a head joint a couple of years ago that I used to get me through Paris, and the person I sold it to, it's so adorable. About 3 times a year, she sends me a picture of where it's being played, and I love it. These are breathing things. Okay, they're not actually breathing things, fucking obviously, but this is how we make connections as humans. And that story is beautiful about Catherine Hoover's flute. That's amazing. Other stories. Let's see what I've got here. Fuck, there's some great ones. Someone here plays a John Webb head joint. It's Juan. We all know Juan. He's great. He talks about how John Webb was a small head joint maker. He only made a handful of them. He loves the aesthetic of the John Webb head joints. And he said he would never sell his Altus flute, which is connected on because it's got huge sentimental value. And he was dying to get this John Webb head joint. It's one of a small number. And he said he values greatly an instrument that is handcrafted by a master. We handcraft the music itself, and a machine-made instrument just doesn't feel the same. By playing it, I'm playing a piece of flute history. Which is beautiful. He says quite old and already arrived with some, like the head joint has some dents and shit in it, and he loves that because it makes him think that it was used a lot in orchestras, like a craft thing. And he said, funny fact is that John Webb was the major goldsmith of Britain's church, and he was the maker of the original Wimbledon trophies. So we're talking about a real master of craft and silver. That is going to make you feel $1 million playing that. That history is going to give you that respect towards the instrument every time you go towards it, thinking that's special. And of course it will change your playing. How the fuck would it not? Eric messaged me. He's now playing on a wooden pile. We all know Eric Flute on Instagram. Why does he play? It's responsive and powerful as a metal flute. There's a lot of earthy colours you don't find in a gold flute. The power scale is fantastic and it's fucking sexy and cool to look at. It's the Maserati of wood flutes. And there you are. He says all kinds of things about how it's warm and it's living, and he says he loves it as a material because it's much more human. There you are. When you read that from Eric, you'd be like, right, well, I'm getting a wooden flute. That sounds fucking class. And that's his connection to wood. I fucking hate wooden flutes. I cannot play on them. I sound like shit on them. But it's my own perception. I love gold because I'm a flashy bastard. What I can get in a gold flute and what someone else can get are two totally different things. Like Brienne had a fucking class story, and I need to look this up actually because she sent me it literally just before she got in here. But one of the big reasons why she got her flute is because she was able to get money for it. She was able to source money for it, and that's incredibly important. What did she say about this? The flute feels amazing. Balance is perfect. The key system is so free and easy. Hated the head joint, but changed it. Got a new one, and now she's got a brand and body and a 14 karat gold Manca head joint with a platinum riser. The Manca is so flexible, rich and dark when you need it, bright when you want it. These are the things that people use to describe every brand and every material. I hear the words rich and dark. I never hear someone say it's cold and it's poor. Every flute is described as rich and dark and expressive and round and buttery. And these are all the words we use for every fucking brand. And these are not scientific words. Rich is not a word. You can't measure richness. Richness to me, like, I don't know, someone might turn around there and say, Petit Flou yogurts are rich. And I'd be like, have you ever had French butter? No, they haven't. So you don't even know what fucking rich is until you have French butter. Have you ever had a tartiflette? Then you tell me what rich is. You know, Americans might go out there and say, oh, fucking Five Guys cheeseburger is so rich. And like, you haven't got a fucking baldies, mate. But you think it's rich. Rich is a subjective word. Round is a subjective word. Okay? Buttery. Even that idea of buttery. Your butter If you're American, your butter's shit. If you're Irish or you're French, your butter's great. These are all subjective terms. I mean, use them all the time. So, I'm telling you all this to point out the fact that flutes are unique, breathing things. And there's no better one than another better one. Don't listen to anyone that says it. Go and find your flute. So here's your tips, okay? Tips for getting the flute, and then I'm going to fuck off, all right? Don't stress. Really do not stress about getting the flute. Do not let shops and makers stress you out either. They're all after your money. Tell them to go fuck themselves. You pick what you want to pick, okay? You will get something class. If you're looking for a high-end instrument, whatever you get will be fucking class, and you will learn to love it, okay? You're not going to find the perfect flute for you, okay? Your taste will change, your style will change, and there's no such thing as a better brand than another, unless you play offset G, in which case you're wrong and you're fucking soft and you should grow up. Be an adult. Play inline G. Allow yourself to be drawn to a flute. Allow yourself to fall in love with one for whatever stupid reason. I bought this flute because it was gold and I could afford gold. And I wanted to be like James Galway and my teachers. That's it. And it made me a better player. By far. I did it for something very stupid and it worked. So fucking don't let anyone say that's not valid. Again, be careful of any brand that says they're better than another brand. They're talking out their holes. If there was one brand that was definitely better, we'd all be buying them. It's all marketing, lads. It's all marketing. Okay, Muramats are doing a great job at the minute. Haynes are sort of taking over the world a little bit. Plenty of great players play Sankyo. Plenty of great players play Paul. You know, fucking Matthew Dufour plays Yamaha. There's no right answer. Okay, if there was a right answer, we'd all be playing it. Or all the top players would be playing them. They're not. So do not listen to anyone that says that. It's for you. And they are different, okay? But I really think at the top end of instruments, the maker isn't actually the thing. It's the specific flute a lot of the time. Although I would buy any 14 karat gold Brandon tomorrow if I could afford it. Brand loyalty is an amazing thing. And I feel very loyal to Sankyo because I've got to know the people there and I feel a bit connected to them. And they're lovely. Throw them out the window tomorrow if I thought I had something better. And I wouldn't get pressured by them. Do it for the right reasons. Don't do it because you're guilted into it. Try the flutes. Fucking play them. Get to know them. Love them. Spend time with them. These are breathing instruments. Learn their history. Learn where they were made, what they're made of, who played them before you. Secondhand flutes are a beautiful thing. They really are. I don't think I would want a brand new flute. Secondhand flutes, I would always choose first because someone's played them. They've been there. They've done that. It's a thing to hold and to love. So I think secondhand flutes are better and they're cheaper as well. In the end, lads, your thing, but you'll be grand. A flute is a flute. It's not worth stressing about, okay? There are much more important things in the world. And here, worst case scenario, you buy a flute, you don't like it, fucking sell it and get a new one. Everyone's doing that. Anyway, lads, that's me away. I've talked too much bollocks in this episode. 52 minutes, fucking hell, right? We're away. It was like an intro to big topics this week. We will delve more into them in depth over the next few weeks, and I'll make it more hardcore when I do some actual fucking research and ChatGPT lets me back on. Until then, take it easy, guys. Look after yourselves. Slán go fóill, and mwah.
Get your man the flute to play something, fuck.